Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, a Cadence independent media production. If you're just joining us, we talk about tuning and tone and hacks and myth busting and gaff tape and all kinds of things here. And today we're talking about toms, but we're talking about toms that are acting kind of shady and we can't figure out why they're behaving how they're behaving, and just hitting on some common problems I run into when I'm doing backline kits and rental stuff, things like that. I love toms. I usually use 2, sometimes I use 3. I use them a lot in grooves and for color and things like that, fills, all that stuff. And when you're using drums that don't belong to you, or you're using drums that get used by a lot of people, like a backline kit, something like that, you can run into a lot of different weird things that the drums are just kind of doing, and it's hard to tell what the problem is. So we're going to address my 3, I guess you could call them favorite ones that I've run into just in the city here. Thanks again to ProMark by D'Addario, our presenting sponsor, for helping us out. We are rocking Acorn 5A Rebound Fire Grains today. And what we're hitting with them is some odd sounding toms. But we're going to start out with where we were before we started messing them up. So this is sort of middle range, resonant, normal sounding stuff. Check it out. They sound like toms. They're tuned sort of in the middle of their range. We have coded G12s on top. We have cleared G1s on bottom, which is my normal thing for toms for just like everyday use. We didn't think about notes or intervals or anything like that. We just tuned them to sound good, which means that the heads aren't dramatically different in pitch. The resos are a little bit higher than the batters. Pretty standard. Now, we're going to go ahead and mess them up. So, first, if your toms sound like this, immediately, the first thing I hear is that the drum wants to resonate and it can't. And the first thing I think when I hear that, when I see that, is that the reso head is tuned way too high. And in this case, it is. The drum is in tune, the heads are in tune with themselves, but the sort of issue here that we're addressing is the idea that I sat down at these drums, I hit them, and I was like, I want them to be fatter and lower and thick sounding. So I tuned them correctly, but I only tuned the batter heads down. I didn't do anything to the bottom heads. And a lot of backline kits, for some reason, have really, really high tuned reso heads. So what we're going to run into here is a batter head that can't activate the reso head, and then a reso head that can't activate the shell. Nothing can interact because one's choked, one's too low, and the shell's just kind of hanging out. So this feels really kind of crunched and compressed in front of me. The volume doesn't sound very good, and it doesn't do anything at low dynamics. If you hit it as hard as you can, it sort of sounds like a tom, but anything down lower, it's just not activating it. So at this sort of note for the tom, I would raise the batter up in pitch and I would lower the reso down to get them closer together so that they can talk to each other, resonate with the shell, and make some kind of note. And it might not be down in the dumps like guttural tone, but it's going to sound good, and that's what we need at the end of the day. All right, number 2, maybe the most common. If your toms sound like this. batter tuned perfectly. We have a reso tuned wildly imperfectly. And what we're looking at here again is the reso not getting addressed as a component of the sound and a component of the tuning. The batters are in the range that I want them to be. They're the right kind of pitch, but I'm not able to get any tone reflecting off the bottom and getting thrown through and helping the whole thing become one resonating body. And that's because there's dissonance in the reso head. Some of the lugs are super loose, one of them's fallen out, other ones are kind of very, very tight. And in addition to this maybe messing your hoops up and definitely messing up your reso head, you're just not going to be able to get tone out of the drum. It might give you some where your face is, but it's not going to make it to the audience. It's going to be relatively thin even in the close mics compared to a full sounding drum. In this case, it's just about flipping the drum over and getting the bottom head in tune and then figuring out where you want that to sit pitch-wise relative to the batter head. When I use rental kits and backline kits, I do way more tuning to the reso side than the batters. I actually often don't have to mess with the batters very much. Now, number 3. It's hard to call this a problem, but it's kind of a problem. If your drums sound like this, so this one's a little tricky because some of the ethos around here is that we try to get the most out of the least. We're not about having a gazillion drums, and we're not about having to buy a lot of stuff to get a certain sound. This is a situation, though, that I've actually run into in studios when I was the one recording and I was using the drums that were there, and it is that I'm trying to get low-sounding toms, and the toms are in tune, the interval's correct, they're just too low. And a 10-inch tom can get in the range of a 12, but it can't get to the bottom. And a 14 can get down where a 16 can live, but the bottom of a 16 will always be past the bottom of a 14. So there are situations where a 10 and a 14 like this, it's challenging to get it to do the thing you want. It's never going to be Bonham stuff. In the same way that a huge kit with 14, 16, 18 is never going to sound like Max Roach. These are tools and they do certain things and they have a span of usability in terms of the tuning range. The Venn diagram, they do cross over, but understanding the limitations will help you get a good sound and save you from fighting them, trying to make them do something that they just don't want to do and they might not be able to do. It's nothing wrong with the drums. It's just a matter of understanding that you're trying to get them to resonate, and if you're down too low or if you're up too high, you just have to be okay with that. And there's a lot you can do with muffling, head choice, more meticulous tuning to get a really wide range out of any given drum. But you do have to take the time. You can't just be like, oh, these heads aren't working and so the drum's no good. Go into it and figure out things and learn what your drums do and then put that to your advantage. Now, any of these may sound acceptable to you, and the fact of the matter is they are acceptable if it's what you want. And, we say this over and over again, if you're happy with the sound you're making, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're happy, then you're happy. But there are limitations to a under-resonating drum, and the primary one is that it's not throwing the tone that the mic right here is hearing very far at all. And just as a quick comparison, we're going to A-B the close mics and then the far mics in our room here, and you'll see the shift in the tone that the mics are receiving from the toms. So if you're trying to get to the audience and you're tuning your drums like this and there's no close mics, or maybe the sound guys not super on top of the job, they're just not going to make it, and you're not going to have that power that you feel like you have right here when you're pounding away and enjoying yourself. So the end of the day, you have to understand, you know, and again, we've said this before, you have to understand where the tone is supposed to be getting to. And if it's just you right here, then, you know, do whatever you want. But if there's mics far away, or if you're in an unusual miking situation, or if you're in an unmiked situation, there are concessions that have to be made. So understanding that going forward, you'll be able to get your sound where it needs to go, and people are going to love it. The audience is going to love it, the band's going to love it, and it's going to kill. So that about wraps it up for us with this little kind of like deep dive into the toms and what they'll do and what maybe they don't want to do. And I want to take a moment to mention also the community is growing at an unbelievable rate, and we are totally freaked out about it. And we're starting to have difficulty getting to every single specific question that comes up on the YouTube channel. We are building an interactive community on our Patreon account. So please, if you want to have continuous dialogue with us about the issues you're having or questions about what we're doing here, that's the place to meet up with us. It's going to be way easier, and we can kind of start to build a community there. We also have a Facebook community that's tied to that you can reach through the Patreon account. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification button down below so that you can get a notification anytime we put a video up. If you're not getting those notifications for some kind of algorithmic reason from YouTube, we post them every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks again to our presenting sponsor, ProMark by D'Addario, for helping us out. And please let us know your experiences with toms acting up, not acting up, what you think of the sounds that we made today where maybe you've heard them. And also, if you steer into any of these kind of unusual tom sounds for a reason, because we're always curious. There's no bad sound. It's just like the context sometimes has to change. So let us know what you're up to, and we'll see you out there.